Welcome to a homegrown family podcast where we grow the produce and the kids. Hey everyone, welcome to a homegrown family podcast. I'm your host Joe Metler, and wow, it's been a while. It's been since July 1st since I released my latest episode, which is 4 or 5 months since my last episode. And tell you what, it's been a hectic summer between summer colds, trying to remodel my kitchen, just doing family activities with the family and everything, and just a busy time. And then my job is more demanding in the summertime as well. Anyways, so I try to do these podcasts when I can. And since it's been a while, I just kind of want to talk about real quickly, what the Homegrown Family Podcast is about for those who are just starting to listen or those who haven't listened for quite a while. So there's really two components. You have a homegrown family. You have the homegrown component and the family component. And homegrown is such a wide category. I talked anywhere from mushroom hunting or foraging to, raising sheep or pigs or cattle or something like that with my folks. I shared some stories with my grandma and kind of her upbringing in life and just anything homegrown. It could be canning, could be making preservatives, could be, talking about my vegetable gardening. In this episode, it's going to be talking about hunting pronghorn in North Dakota, which, is filling the freezer, growing or collecting your own meat, right? And so that's kind of the homegrown component. And then the family component, is, which I really haven't gotten into a whole lot yet, is going to be talking about Montessori education, classical education, homeschooling kind of stuff, and raising our kids. I got to get my wife on board to talk about some of these different things we've experienced while raising our kids or this and that. So, yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. And today, I'd like to tell you guys a little story about hunting pronghorn in North Dakota. I have a coworker of mine, his name's Craig, and him and I, we do some hunting together. I drew my lifetime elk tag, cow elk tag here in North Dakota, and did that a couple years back, and Craig has some friends out in western North Dakota where we went hunting, and I've been putting in for a pronghorn tag, and in North Dakota, you basically have to get, 5, 6, 7, 8 preference points in order to draw a tag, at least for a buck tag, right, or male pronghorn tag. And so I was coming up on year 6, and I was kind of hopeful, and I did draw one, so that was great. Fantastic, right? And so I guess for those of you guys who don't know much about North Dakota, I live on the eastern side of the state, and pronghorn really isn't prevalent around here. You have to get mostly towards the western half of the state, some in the central part of the state, right? And so I was very fortunate to have this friend Craig of mine, after I draw my buck tag, to go to western North Dakota. I crashed at his friend's place there, and his dad also drew a tag. His brother drew a tag in the unit north of us, and then his brother also drew his lifetime elk tag. So we had 3 pronghorn tags to fill this weekend, and we also had an elk tag to fill, and then you also had any of your bull, whitetail, or mule-tailed deer out in North Dakota as well. And so Craig, his brother, and his dad went to their friend's place early in the week and spent the first couple of days elk hunting, unfortunately unsuccessfully, right? And so I'm pulling in Thursday night. I get into their place there, Rick's place there, and we're going to start hunting Friday. Pronghorn opener is on Friday at noon, to be precise. And so Friday morning, the brothers go elk hunting, and I go pronghorn hunting with Rick and Craig's dad. And Craig's dad's 84 years old, and Rick is not too much younger. They're both retired. Don't really get up and around too well anymore these days, and so it wasn't quite what I expected the first day out. I figured I'd hunt with Craig like I normally do, and, well, not quite. My hunting experience took a turn, I would say, and I ended up hunting with the old geezers, or the old guys you call them, or, whatnot. No offense to them if they ever listen to this, as I tell this story. So, I'm expecting in my mind that, before I get into this a little bit more, let's talk about pronghorn. And some will call them speed goats. They're kind of are just a large goat. They're not as nearly as big as a whitetail. You'll get 20 to 40 pounds of meat, depending on the size. And in western North Dakota, in the area that we were hunting, south of interstate, it's primarily ag land, corn, soybeans, wheat. There's a lot of wheat stubble out there and a lot of wheat fields. And that's primarily where we would see the pronghorn, because wheat harvest occurred, probably late July or early August over in western North Dakota. And so there's some regrowth of wheat happening in these wheat fields, and so that's what they were kind of munching on and eating on out in that area. But there's probably 80% agricultural land, and then there's like little bluffs and hills, kind of badlandish. If you've ever been to like, Roosevelt National Park or Medora out in North Dakota. A little bit of that, but mostly ag land. And so I pictured myself in this environment before I went hunting out there, kind of similar to elk, where we'd be walking around in these ups and downs and try to go to the ravines, and things, and try to find them, kick them out, or whatever. And Craig did say that, well, it'll be more ag land hunting and you'll be able to see them from the pickup, but the key is going to be getting a close shot, And part of the whole process of going out here is, well, what rifle do I use to hunt these pronghorn? They're not very big. I only own a 30-06. And now all you guys who are out there listening, wow, using a 30-06 to shoot pronghorn? Yep, you're right. It's a little overkill, okay? I was like 2 inches high at 100, dead on at 200, and then, I think I was like 6 inches low at 300 yards. So I want to be 200 yards or closer if possible, and I can basically aim dead on, and I'll be fine, 250. So that's kind of what my goal was, as I'm looking forward to this hunt. And I got a little bit of grief for that. A lot of those guys had like 243s or something a little bit more straight shooting. I'll shoot, a little pie plate, 4-inch pie plate at up to 400 yards, so, which is good for the old guys, and I just wanted to use my own gun. I could have borrowed my father-in-law's 270, but shot pretty similar to the 30-06 with a little bit less kick. But something about shooting an animal with your own rifle, right? And so we wake up. The old guys didn't have to wake up too early because couldn't hunt till noon. And so we get out of bed about 8 o'clock, and we're starting to drive around about 9 o'clock, and we're driving around, scouting out the fields. There's a bunch of pronghorn over here, a bunch of pronghorn over there, and, kind of scouting where the bucks are in the morning, but we're not the only ones, right? I mean, pronghorn tags you don't get very often. There's several other cars and trucks out there scouting the areas out, and we came across this one spot. I think we were about 15 minutes before shooting time, and there are these pronghorn sitting 50 yards from the road in this nice, lush green. I'm not sure what that guy planted, but definitely wasn't wheat. Maybe it was a hayfield that was 6 inches tall now, after not cutting it for the third time. And there's 3 bucks in there, and one was probably close to 15 inches. And from what I'm told, what Craig tells me, 15 inches out in North Dakota is pretty darn good. The average decent sized one you're going to get is going to be 13, 14 inches, and that's from the base of the antler to the curl of the antler. So they'll have a kind of curl towards the rear, And so we're like, holy cow, well, Rick, also lives in the area and knows all these farmers around. And so that's really the big perk about this whole entire hunting experience, is that Rick had all his opportunities to hunt private land, where most of the other hunters would have to hunt on these public lands because they don't have access to this private property. And so we're like, wow, let's go pull in this guy's house, because the area where these pronghorn were literally in the same section as the house. And so we pull in and ask Rick, hey, do we all want to go up there? I wouldn't mind introducing myself to the guy's land who might be hunting on, Rick didn't have a tag, so he's literally just chauffeuring us around, trying to get, Craig's dad to probably get his last pronghorn he's ever going to get, being 84 years old. And so we talked to this landowner. Rick said, no, it'll just be me. I'll just talk to him, Oftentimes we don't get permission there, so we'll see. Well, the landowner didn't get his gratis tag, which is a tag, for the private landowner that owns the property to be able to hunt, nuisance animals eating his hay and stuff like that. In his area, so you get a gratis tag if you're granted one. Well, he didn't get one this year, so he said, yeah, sure, you can hunt on my land, but you're second in line. The guy that previously lived here, his grandson, is up and asked me about 5 minutes ago whether or not he could hunt that land. And so we were kind of disappointed right off the bat that we couldn't get an easy shot right at opening hours, which would have made it all too easy. So I was picturing we'd have to park in a spot. I'd probably have to stock up a little bit, get closer to the animals, and then get a nice prone shot and hopefully, drop the animal. But these two old guys kind of had this mentality of, not to kind of put it in bad terms, but to run and gun, right? Rick would stop a truck, we'd hop out, we'd lay prone on the road or go to an approach, put down tripods. In the case of Craig's dad, he'd oftentimes put his gun on the hood. Craig's dad is a little bit more wobbly, not as stable as he used to be. And so I was under the impression, when I told the guys, hey, I'm not going to shoot first. I want Craig's dad to be the one to get his animal, get his pronghorn, and I'll get my chance later in the week, the weekend if I had to. The first time, a couple times we were able to get a shot off. I was hopped out of the truck. I had my bolt in the chamber and basically kind of waiting, looking around for Craig's dad to shoot. And he's just getting out of the pickup. 84 years old, you don't move very quick. And so I'm kind of waiting. And this one instance, where we found one, he was literally 160 yards. He popped out, had his gun over the hood, and was kind of trying to aim. And I sat there and I waited, and I should have had my scope on the animal already, but I waited for the shot. He shot, and I waited some more. He's like, are you going to shoot again? Because he's kind of still standing there, kind of letting him get his shots on. Eventually, I took a running shot, at 250 or something like that, missed. But so that was kind of the mentality going into this hunt, the first day, is that we're doing some running gun kind of things. And I had two older guys who weren't moving very quick. So, I was a little impatient, and I told the guys eventually, hey, do you guys mind if I take the first shot if I'm ready and I got a good one? And I'm lined up, and, they're like, oh, no, by all means. So I was like, no way. Yes, I could have been putting the first pop on some of these earlier. But just how it goes. I just took a sip of some wine that I just bottled up yesterday that we got from our orchard back at the farm. And those of you who have previously listened to this know that I'm into winemaking and cider making and stuff. And this cultivar of grapes called Prairie Star. And, man, it is just very delightful. Very sweet and white. And just goes down easy. Anyways, side note. And so that goes on for a little while. And we found out that Craig and his brother eventually kind of gave up on the elk hunt. It was getting a little bit windy and they didn't have any luck. And they actually saw a pronghorn in their unit because they're in the unit north of us. And his brother got his pronghorn, so they brought the pronghorn back to Rick's place and skinned it, got the skin off. Which I guess is very important when it comes to pronghorn because the animal will taste better if you get the skin off as soon as possible. Especially if you're out in areas where there's like sagebrush in Wyoming. Your antelope meat can get kind of sagey if you don't take the skin off fast enough and get it cooled down quickly. But so they did that. They skinned it up, and then they called us up like, "Hey, where are you guys at?" And Rick rattled off the section by who knows farm and this and that. Like, "Oh yeah, okay. We just saw some over by this, and this place." And we're like, "Wait, what? Aren't you guys elk hunting?" No, we figured we'd help you guys find some antelope and maybe do some of our bow tag hunting. And so we circled around back to this place where we originally stopped in the morning, where that bigger 15-inch guy was. And there were still a couple of bucks that were hanging out in that section of wheat field. And so we went back there and shot again, missed him again. He's close to like 250 again. And he went across the road, and then Craig and them guys came back through and said, "Hey, now we're at this place, and this is where we just were because we left there because we were unsuccessful." And Craig goes, "Hey, there's like a herd of like 30 of them over here." And so they drove over to the other side of the field because at this point, pronghorn, anytime they see a truck, they're like, "Okay, yep, we're getting out of here." So we kind of lost our window of easy shots, really. Or close shots, anyways. Sometimes we get curious and turn around when they think they're far enough away at this point. But they pulled up and came to one side. I pulled up and, came to the other side with Rick, and we kind of stopped there and kind of waited to see which directions they were kind of call and go. And finally, we were able to zoom on to the other side of the section where they were going to be crossing the road. We waited until they crossed the road, and we kind of both had decently clear shots, but it just wasn't happening. I don't know, we had tripods on, and we used a lot of different stable things. But I think I shot 4 or 5 times that afternoon. Shot just over, or just in front as they're kind of jogging or something like that, and overthought the whole process, really. And I'm not used to hunting with tripods either, so that was a little bit new for me. Sometimes it took a little bit longer to get set up, or And even hunting over top of tailgates and things like that was different. And the tripod sits right where I usually put my hand, and I just wasn't very comfortable in the shooting environment that I had that day. It just wasn't very good. We weren't very successful. In fact, we weren't successful that first day, other than Craig's brother got his pronghorn. Then we went back to Rick's place, cooked up some steak, and had supper, and kind of talked about the game plan for the next day. And it was supposed to be 20-plus mile-an-hour winds. And Craig and his brother thought, well, why do we even bother hunting elk? Because they're going to be up in the ravine. We're basically going to have to kick them out, walk, miles and miles to find the right draw somewhere, to get the elk to kick up. So they thought, well, let's break it up a little bit. Let's change it up. Let's go ahead and have Craig and Joe hunt pronghorn in their truck. And then Rick will take their dad and Craig's brother. And then they'll go do the run and gun method. Well, Craig and I might try a little bit more of a sneaky approach, a little more stable type of thing. And Craig's brother looks over at Craig and says, I bet you have one down by 10:30 a.m. So he kind of had a goal in mind. But I just knew it was going to be more fun with Craig because he's got a lot of experience and things, and get out early before day breaks, start driving around these fields and hoping, we find a set that's close before they get spooked up again for the day. And we kind of stopped, scouted out, looking, we go on top of hills as we're going along the gravel road, and we stop and eyeglass with our binoculars and try to see what we can see. And I'm about ready to move to the next spot. I'm like, wait, Craig, I think I see some. And they were basically on the horizon practically in 2 sections over, and I'm like, I think that's a patch right there. And he goes, oh, no way. Good spot. They are kind of in that section there a lot of the time. And he's like, well, let's drive around and see if we can get closer road access, and we'll go from there. He's like, normally it's pretty tough to hunt that section because you really don't have a good approach anywhere, right? So we drive around to the other side, kind of stopped and kind of looked at him again. Like, there's one buck there, medium size, wasn't very big. But I'm like, I don't care. I mean, I've never shot a pronghorn before. I'll take a medium-sized buck. That's fine with me. I'm not shooting and going for 14, 15 inches. If I get a 9, 10 incher, I'm fine with that. Meat's meat, I've never tried it before. So we kind of drove back around the other side again and determined that this was in the middle of a wheat stubble field after harvest. They're in the middle of this section. It's relatively flat, some undulating and rolling hills. Couldn't approach it from the north because it's downhill the whole way. They'd see you. Same thing with the east and west sides. Couldn't do it. On the south end of the section, it actually goes uphill for the slight ways and then downhill. And they're kind of like in that saddle right there. So I thought to myself, well, if we park on the south side, we can probably approach that hill, get to the point where we think we could see him, start, crouching and then start crawling until we just crest over the top of this hill. And hopefully we can see him. And so we start making this, got our guns loaded up and everything. And we kind of start walking towards this hilltop. It's a very gradual hilltop. There's not, so we're walking pretty slowly because we're kind of keeping our eye on the horizon, over the hill to see if they're able to see them. Because as soon as we pop our heads over, they're going to be able to see us and we're going to spook them. Right? And so we get closer and closer. We start kneeling, crouching, and going on our hands and knees. And then about the time we have to start crawling to get closer, there's a bunch of Russian thistle weeds that we have to crawl through that are like 8 inches tall. And if you ever see the barbed wire Russian thistle, it's like wire fence, but a plant material, but it's pretty hard. And I had pokers going through my pants, my thigh as I was crawling, and even on your elbows and stuff, you just have them just sitting there and poking you. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this hurts. But I don't really remember feeling it too much at the time. But after I was done with that hunt, you could just tell your legs were sore and stuff. So I had some adrenaline going, And I remember Craig was a little bit farther ahead than me. He's trying to get a little quick peek so that way I can quickly shuffle to the left or right if I needed to get a better shot off. So he was kind of getting in there first, and I was kind of keeping my head a little higher. And I'm like, wait, they're right there. They're right there. They're right over the crest here, just a little bit toward the left. And we're getting closer and we're getting closer. And the wind's all going towards us, going to the south. So we had a north wind. And so we could kind of whisper a little bit and they wouldn't hear us and they weren't going to sniff us out. So they needed to see us in order for us to really spook them, right? And we're laying down, going on our, belly crawling here. And we get to the point where we're like, oh, we see him. it froze, and we're sitting there and I'm like, oh yeah, there they are. All right. I'm like thinking to myself, okay, where do I get a shot off? I got to get my gun around some of these weeds, and buck's like between me and the house right at the corner of a section. So I kind of had put my gun in a position to where I was going to be waiting for the buck to move a little bit to get out of the position to be able to get a good line of sight, right? And the lead doe, in a pronghorn herd, usually go up kind of front, whichever direction that the lead doe goes, the rest of the herd follows, and the buck kind of follows in behind in the back. And the lead doe must have spotted us or something, and so I had a shot, was ready to line up for it and fire. The buck moved a little bit, just enough out of the way of the house, and a shot, I missed. Shot over. Craig's like, oh, he shot over. And then the lead doe kind of definitely caught her attention then at that point. She ran across the herd over to the east and ultimately stopped and turned around. And in the meantime, I picked up my gun a little bit. I'm kind of retracing where this buck's at. Have my crosshairs on him. He's kind of galloping away, getting farther and farther and farther away. And I'm like, no, I'm going to lose him. And so when that doe stopped, so did the buck. Turned broadside back the other direction, and boom! Shot, hit him, and we kind of waited a second. He turned around, kept on running and running. We're like, oh no. Craig's like, no, you got him. Don't worry about shooting him again. You got him. You hit him. It's a good shot. And I was kind of looking at him. I'm like, it looked like it was a lung shot, like he's going to be running a while. I'm like, oh no, this isn't good. And so look, there's this red spot right in the middle of his, stomach area. And I'm like, this is not going to be good. 2 seconds later, he's running out. So I shot him at about 200 yards, 180, 200, the first shot. And he got farther away and it was 225 yards, the second shot. And by the time he turned around and fell down, it was 250. So he ran about 25 yards, and we were just, thank goodness. And this happened right, shooting hours. We're 15 minutes into shooting hours. Kind of let him sit there for a while we're doing some quick pictures, making sure that he was, was passed before we get up there and kind of jump him again, especially if he just had a gut shot. I went back to the truck, drove along the field edge of the section there. In the middle of the section, there was a field break, so we were able to drive that little field road and get within, 40 yards or so. And then walked up there, and sure enough, it was actually a good between a lung and heart shot. And it was actually just the blood squirting out that made it look like it was coming back that far by the guts there. So it was a good shot. He died relatively quickly, so that was a nice clean kill. He's about 10.5 inch on the antlers. Not very big, by any standards by any means. But an exciting hunt. It was very exciting to shoot my cow elk with Craig. And that was about 200 yards with 30-06 heart shot. And to have this, also to have, I really didn't want to do the whole run and gun thing because just jump out, shoot, boom, got him. That's shooting. It's not hunting. And so to have, a 200 yard approach to get to a spot where you can get a good shot and actually have a little bit of challenge and, oh, hey, you shot and missed. They turned, they're running, their gun, and they're stopped. And gave you another shot. It took a little bit more skill and finesse. And no, I really feel good about myself in that hunt. Yeah, no, it was awesome. I'm looking forward to eating more of that meat. And so what I heard with the meat was that, you can taste sagey, right? And I had some of the chops from the tenderloin, or from the loin, and it tasted like venison to me with a little bit more tenderness. And I just put a little bit of seasoning salt on there because I wanted to taste the pronghorn. I wanted to know what pronghorn tasted like, so I didn't really season it very well, or very heavily. And I thought it was probably a little bit better than venison. I didn't have any saginess whatsoever. And I told this to Craig, and he's like, oh yeah, it's because they're corn-fed. So the North Dakota pronghorn are better tasting than your Wyoming pronghorn. So that was kind of fun to try. But I ended up getting about 30 pounds of trim, and then 5 packages of chops and the tenderloins. So I'm going to take that 30 pounds, probably mix it with 30% pork from my folks' farm, and just make hamburger with it. I think is what my plan is. Make burgers with it, put it in hot dishes, whatever. Should taste pretty good, considering we do a lot of venison burger combos as well. So that won't be anything new for me, but I'm really looking at tasting it and cutting up that pronghorn here one of these days. yeah, that basically put, 35 pounds of meat into our freezer. And yeah, so that's pretty much my hunting for pronghorn in North Dakota. Another side note, I guess, so during pronghorn season, you also have partridge and grouse and sharptails that you can be shooting. Well, as we're running around trying to find pronghorn later in the day for his brother, for Craig's brother, they're two in the front seat and I'm sitting in back. And the only thing I'm shooting at this point, I'm just glassing for more pronghorn for, actually at that point, he had his pronghorn in a different unit already. So we were shooting bows for mule deer and whitetail. And so I'm in the back seat, kind of just glassing and looking for deer for him. And then if partridge or other birds came in, I'd grab a shotgun, hop out, and I'd try to get some. But the partridge, I don't know if I've ever really shot at partridge before, but it's definitely interesting because as soon as you hop out, they're like, oh yeah, go get them. You hop out and they just keep on running away. It's like yelling at you, yo, you gotta run at them. And then when they fly up, you gotta shoot them. So I go run after them, and then they fly up finally. And then by the time you get set, and then you get a covey of 15 partridge flying in the air, it's hard to pick which one to shoot at and whatnot. So I putzed around and shot several rounds at some partridge, but never did end up getting any. But did get a sharptail though earlier, and then Craig ground that up into a jerky and brought some into work the other day, and that tasted pretty good. So I did get one bird off the weekend. So yeah, I think that's the end of the story. Hope you enjoyed it. It's a pretty quick episode here, but hoping to kind of get back into it here the next couple weeks. Kind of hopefully might see another episode or two prior to December, perhaps, or maybe prior to Christmas. You might see 3 or 4 episodes. I'll try to get back into it here, but looking forward to any feedback that you guys have. Feel free to rate the podcast, please. That way we can get more listeners, and then help support my podcast. Click a link on the below. It says support the show or something like that, and it brings you to Buy Me a Coffee website. You can just donate $5 to the show, help buy me a coffee, quote unquote, buy me a coffee, but just to help provide a little bit more motivation to get out there and put out episodes. If you're not getting paid for doing this, it's just kind of a thing you do to listen back on in the future. Once I start getting Alzheimer's or something, can listen to it and be like, oh yeah, I remember that time I went pronghorn hunting with Craig. The one thing that I thought was really cool was I was able to do an episode with my Uncle Bernie. And it's kind of hitting home a little bit now that we're going deer hunting here pretty soon in November. And, it's going to be the first one that he's missed. And deer hunting with Uncle Bernie episode. And so that's why I'm doing these episodes, you guys, is capture some of these moments with family and myself, for my kids, later on in life. They can go back and listen to this if they want and learn about a weird story that they never heard before. But I hope you guys are getting something away from this podcast as well. And I'd love to hear the feedback. So comments, ratings, all the good stuff. And so hopefully I'll come back here pretty soon here with another episode. Thank you all for listening. And until next time.